Good morning and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist. We are here today outside of our office and at the back of the tailgate again.
Yeah, standing out in the sun. Now it's finally sunny outside. I know the last few days have not been sunny.
Right,
so.
I know. This is great. I'm sure everyone in our territory, for the most part, are appreciating the sunshine.
Yeah, rain's always a good thing. You never complain about rain, especially in August, but we've had a lot. A lot in several areas. I know Wisconsin's had some 14-inch amounts,
Wow.
closing the school and everything else. We've had our share as well the last couple weeks. It's just not going down. Ditches are full. So it's kind of a welcome relief to see some sun and drier weather.
Hopefully it'll dry some things out, especially for our field day we have next Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, looking forward to that. It starts at 9 o'clock. And Phil, you'll be one of the speakers there talking about precision ag, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep, cover crops, everything. We'll have everything on display. I know it's we'll cross our fingers on the weather side of things because our field does tend to stay wet, but we'll find a way to get out there and see the hybrids and everything.
Yeah, rain or shine, we will have a plan. All right, well today we're going to be talking about corn yield estimates, and Phil, you are obviously the expert here, so I'll just let you take it away with maybe the first things to start looking at, or
Sure. Yeah. When it comes to estimating corn yields, I know we're kind of sitting, early September. Most guys are trying to estimate. The papers and interviewers and usually are wanting to know around early August. So we're a little late. But in my opinion, this is when your estimates are obviously better. You can estimate it earlier, around right after pollination, when it's in that early milk stage or even blister stage if you want to, but you don't get the full picture as far as kernel depth and everything that's going on with the ear. So right now is still a good time to estimate. To me, this is an excellent time because some of the things we're going to talk about today, getting out and looking at your fields. You can do this while you're looking at them and seeing the stand too, what's going to be there for harvest, and when to harvest too, so which we'll get into later. So the first thing with estimating corn yields, everybody knows, you should know, take a final stand count.
Right.
That's paramount. You have to know what's actually in the field. Whether you planted 38 or 36 or 32, you need to know what's actually in the field. So in this case, I did a one count on a field as well. I got 31,000. You want to do 1/1000th of an acre, which is typically 17 and roughly a half feet or 5 inches. Of rows. So count one row, count all those plants. You want to go in several places in the field. This is where a lot of people mess up their counts. You can't go to that best spot in the field. Go to several spots, 10 locations at least. Walk through the field and stuff. You can do just a few if you want to, but don't pick the best spots.
Don't cherry pick it.
Yeah. It's supposed to be unbiased.
Yeah.
So the next thing really is what everybody gets excited about, and that's the ear. And this is where you can really go wrong. You can really overestimate or underestimate. Typically people overestimate, but we've got two very different sizes of ears here. This one's 16 around and this one's 20.
Right.
Makes a huge difference in yield. The difference in yield on these two is 60-70 to bushel.
Right.
So it's a large difference. So you need to pick ears that are average for that spot that you're in. Pick at least 3 ears in that 17.5 feet that are representative. Maybe just get rid of the bias and do every 5th or 10th ear or something like that as you're going through your stand count. But get representative ears, to look at. And then when you're going through, the best thing to do is just grab a marker, and count. A lot of people break open the ear to count it around. Get the girth. Like I said, in this case, we have one that's 20 around and one that's 16 around.
Right. Very different.
Yeah, very different in kernel depth as well. If you notice on there, it's kind of hard to see, but the kernel depth on this particular ear, is good in both these cases. Very deep, nice deep kernels. And looking at the wrong side of the ear here, but we can kind of see the milk line on these as well. So once you get the girth around that 16 or 20 count, then you want to put it back together if you tore it apart, and make sure you count the length. The key to the length, in my opinion, is make sure you don't start at the very bottom and go to the very tip. Count where there's a start of rows around that are average. You can see go all the way around. So I'm usually conservative on that estimate. I usually start 1 or 2 up and end a few from those tip kernels. The other good thing about when you're doing this, like I said before, I didn't get lucky on any of these, but This is also a good time to find if you have any ear rots. You know, a lot of times you'll see those western bean cutworms or something, you know, eating or feeding on the ear. In this case, a little bit of bird damage, maybe, but assessing some of those issues as you're counting the kernels. So once you get the girth around and the length, then simply all you got to do is get out your calculator or do your math in your head. You know, so you take that 32, or so we got 16 around, and multiply that by your length, 30, 32, whatever it is, and then you get a number, whether it's 500 some kernels per ear. And what you do with that, average all these together, so count all of them, then average them together. In my case, I had 550 as an average. So 550 as an average on each these five years that I picked in the field. And then the most important part, and that's why I wanted to talk about this part, the milk line part, because you can kind of see the kernel depth when you get to this stage. And that's a big key, because if you're doing this at blister stage, you're not going to understand, you know, that factor of how much to put, you know, basically goes in a bushel, you know, a 56-pound bushel. So typically you guys will use 90,000 or 80,000. You know, you can split it right in the middle and go with 85. You know, so if you want to be more conservative, you want to go towards the top, you know, go to 85, 90,000. You know, the range honestly could be anywhere from 65 to 90,000. So it's a wide range. That's why this method is, you know, sometimes, you know, plus or minus 20 bushel. But it gives you an idea. So in our case, I used 85, stuck right in the middle, and ended up right at 200 bushels per acre as a yield estimate for these 5 years that I had in that plant stand of 31,000.
Okay, so how large of a field do you think that test can qualify for?
Well, like I said, I think it depends on how many you take. You know, this one was an 80-acre field. You know, I would want to see at least 5 to 10, you know, taken out of there to actually get a representative sample. You know, if you want to go to the coffee shop and talk about it, you know, and take one sample and use, you know, the factor on the less conservative side, and get a higher, you know, bushel count. But if you're trying to estimate for things like, you know, marketing and stuff, you want to be more conservative and you want to get a representation of the whole field. So I would say more is obviously better. You know, but it's never fun to walk through standing corn. I understand that. So,
all right. So let's just talk about some final considerations. What going forward between here and harvest time would be detrimental to this?
Well, I think, you know, I've been out talking with a lot of guys, and there's going to be it's an interesting season we've had. You know, especially in this immediate area. You know, we planted late. A lot of guys are like, well, you know, typically when you plant that late, you know, that kind of dooms you for yield, because, you know, you're losing part of that season essentially. You know, you're not taking advantage of all those heat units. But we're about 300 heat units ahead of schedule. Okay. That puts us about 12 days, you know, so 10 days to 2 weeks ahead of average. Right. In terms of corn development. So we're seeing a lot of this top dieback, you know, cornfields are kind of yellowing from the top down. And that, I believe, is kind of due to the season we've had. We've had a lot of heat. We've had good pollination, honestly. We've had a really good August. We've had some heat, but it hasn't been excessive. And that's allowed these kernels to fill out to this kind of depth. You know, the ones that maybe the plant started out at, you know, it didn't have the best start. It was in, you know, maybe cooler temperatures or something, or planted late, the roots were bad, whatever the case, you know, shallow roots. You know, whatever the case is, the plant did not set up, you know, for this big a ear. Right. And that's part of the problem that we need to keep in mind. You know, our hybrids do an exceptional job at moving all of that basically that photosynthate into the ear. You know, so they're taking all those nutrients and stuff from the leaves and putting it in this ear to fill out this grain right now. You know, we're sitting right here at half milk line essentially. You know, that's you got about 10% left of actual dry matter accumulation in this ear left to go. So we're getting close, but these ears are filling out really well. And I think that's going to cause a problem. I know I've noticed some weaker stalks. You know, we've got this rain. We've got a lot of potential for stalk rot issues, as well as even some weak shanks on these ears. I've noticed, you know, the ones that are still standing and stuff are a little bit weak. So I think some of those things we need to keep in mind. That's why I think it's a good time to talk about yield estimates, because if nothing else, even if you don't take 10 different counts in your field. You get out there and you're pushing plants around, and you're looking at the ears, seeing what's going to be an issue for harvest.
Right.
Because I think this year, harvest may be on the corn side. Things are developing quicker than we think. So
Yeah.
I think that's an important consideration. And on the stock rot side of things, like I said, I know we've had reports from our Greg Mayer out in Wisconsin, our RSM out there, and he's talked about the tar spot. We've had a lot of reports of guys, saying there might be some stock issues out there. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's something we got to manage for and make sure we're getting on those fields and harvesting them as soon as we can get out there. But it's just a part of the genetics that we have that are trying their hardest. They want to survive, so they want to produce as many of these kernels as they can, and the better
Right.
genetics are doing even better at that. So
Good problem to have.
a good problem to have. Yeah, so we've got really heavy ears and maybe not the strongest stalks and shanks, and so that's just something that we want to keep in mind for going into harvest season. I think as guys are going out and trying to get a look at their fields here before harvest, before they get the combine totally ready. I think that's something really important to keep in mind.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I think that wraps up our topic for today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nope. I just hope that maybe the rain will slow down a little bit here, and the beans will finish out nice with what we've had, and hopefully we can dry out for fall.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Have a good day.